Let me now introduce you all, our next moderator for today, for our next discussion about central bank digital currency. So I'm pleased to introduce you to Laura Giles. She's the country economist at the Inter-American Development Bank for the Bahamas as well as for Barbados. So I will let her introduce her panelists for today. So Laura, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Annie. Good afternoon, everybody. I hope you're enjoying the events today. And I am very excited to introduce the panel on central banks experimenting with digital currencies, which is an extremely timely topic, extremely popular. And with us today, we have two excellent panelists, Ms. Sybil Welsh, who currently serves as a senior project specialist in the Projects and Technical Assistance Unit at the Governor's Office in the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank. She is also a member of the ECCB FinTech Group and coordinates activities for the bank's Eastern Caribbean Digital Cash Pilot Project, which she will be presenting today. Our second panelist is Mr. Bobby Chen, who is a key member of the e-payments department at the Central Bank of the Bahamas and is lead for the project Sand Dollar, which is the central bank digital currency initiative for the Bahamas. Bobby has been an active advocate for blockchain in the Bahamas and has worked in alternative securities investor. Welcome, both of you. Thank you very much for joining us. And I leave the floor for Ms. Welsh.
Hi, good day. It's a pleasure to be here.
Good morning, Ms. Welsh.
Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chen. Ms. Welsh, the floor is yours to introduce the project of the ECCB.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
No problem.
Sorry. I'm trying to multitask because I have my little one here, and okay. So good morning to all. I'm just gonna share my screen, and just to make sure we don't have any dropouts, I'm just gonna cancel my video temporarily for the first intro for 10 minutes. So if you could bear with me, please. Let me just share my screen. Share. That's the share. And put that into. Can everybody see my screen?
Perfect.
Okay, so good day. It's afternoon actually, and it's a really pleasure to be here talking about a project for the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank that is poised to be part of our transformation of our region. And that is our EC Digital Cash Pilot Project. Just to give you a sense of, this is really the evolution of the EC currency, but it's still the same sovereign currency guaranteed by the central bank, 2.7 to 1 to the US dollar. And so really what this is really an evolution of our thrust to build resilience and agility in the economy. Now, based on that, it's obvious, therefore, what are some of the value propositions and the objectives that the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank is focusing on? We have looked at really the public policy goals of financial inclusion, competitiveness, and economic growth. And that's why the central bank has really had a positive view on central bank digital currencies leveraging blockchain, because our objective is really to address the many financial frictions that are impediments to the region's long-term economic growth. We're talking about the relatively high cost of current payment systems and banking services. When you think about the cost for card payments, both on the merchant side, as well as sometimes on the end user side, you think about the cost, not only for the explicit cost for checks, but also the implicit cost in terms of the reconciliation time. All of these aspects are knock-on effect on our payment system. And if we can reduce the cost and increase the efficiencies, then we can drive growth when one considers the nexus between payment systems and growth in the financial sector and real sector growth. Access, we have the issue of underbanked. We may not have a significant population of unbanked. We have a significant amount of commercial banks, credit unions, and other financial services. The issue is really the accessibility to the full gamut of the services and the cost, which is prohibitive, to really drive the way forward. Of course, the ease of doing business has a significant issue in terms of competitiveness, and one can see what is going on right now with COVID-19 in terms of what that time costs when you have to shut down the physical infrastructure to do business. So we know, for example, that we have St. Lucia at 93, and we go all the way down to Grenada, which is on 146 or thereabout on the ease of doing business indicators. And our target is to get in the top 50. When we consider Jamaica is at 91 and Puerto Rico is in the early 60s. This says it's doable. And so when we look at it, we said, what levers can the central bank really maneuver? And really what we have is our currency. And that is at the backbone of our payment system as part of the wider modernization. So our thrust really is for a safer, cheaper, faster way to make EC payments and transfers. It's a peer-to-peer architecture, leveraging blockchain, a private permission. And there was a lot of talk this morning about the various platforms in terms of the design, whether it's public permissioned, public or private permission. This is a private permission, and that adds to the security and the resilience. So when you look at some of the key features, we see that it is legal tender, one-to-one parity with EC notes and coins. There's no fee for converting between both, and it's fully guaranteed convertible via our financial institutions. But we also recognize that it's not just financial institutions that can provide distribution to the general public. And this is the whole issue of financial inclusion, increase in financial access. So if you don't have a bank account with a credit union or a commercial bank, you still have access via what we call agents. And these agents will be able to do the base know your customer, because we want to make sure that if you're talking about a currency, a sovereign currency, the whole issue of transparency and accountability goes to the confidence framework of that currency. What are we looking at in terms of security? Because when we did our surveys and our focus groups and all our engagements, security tops #1 for every stakeholder group. And so the whole issue of the governance architecture, leveraging Hyperledger Fabric, a private permission blockchain design, robust contingencies to address any potential failure, and the issue of leveraging cloud and multiple sites so that if one goes down, you don't have a shutdown of the system. The issue of traceability and auditability, both from a regulatory standpoint, but also from the issue of loss. If you lose your phone, no monies are really stored on the phone, only the communication access. And so the issue to be able to recover is also linked to traceability and auditability. And the design cannot be forged because it is on a private platform controlled by the ECCB only for the minting of any digital assets. The transaction is a separate platform. So what you see here in terms of our value proposition is really security, convenience and access, and speed. For the individual, these are similar to what obtains for digital currencies in terms of value propositions. It's safer because you're not carrying cash on your person. And so the issue of crimes against one's physical premises expected to go down as there's more adoption post-pilot of this. And all the issues of no fees attached, so it's not prohibitive. Real-time information in your app to see where your balance is allows for both at the merchant side and at the individual side for financial planning. If we move closely to look at what we are building is a platform. It's not, the idea is not to build something which you then isolate from the rest of the world. It's a platform on which businesses can build their own applications, their own platforms, customize their own proprietary wallets within the governance structure to approve, and they can offer new services and products. And so you see what we are doing is really providing a framework for economic activity to expand through innovation and development. And so all of the issues for a business, if I'm a merchant, it's contactless, which is very apropos given our current health situation, but also the ease of being able to access one's money rather than having to wait days for the checks to clear or the funds to be in one's account. It happens within seconds. And so one can then determine, do I keep the money on the network or do I convert it to a bank deposit where I can do other transactions? And that is really the potential of having options. How do this work as I close in the last 3 slides? Well, really what you do is you access the wallet from the Apple and Android app stores, and you have to register with a financial institution or an approved service provider. And that is where the KYC happens. So we continue, it's a 2-tier system in that you still have the financial institutions, be there your commercial banks, your credit unions, or some other financial service provider, be it new or current, that can gate access to the application and network. And of course, access is really is based on credentials. So everyone only has access to the information that is proprietary to them. You can convert your funds via the online mobile banking, or you can use physical cash and directly walk into the institutions to do that. Then all you do is you scan a QR code, be it electronically generated, and may I say you download the app and you onboard remotely. You use your smartphone to scan, pay, and confirm payments, and settlement happens within seconds automatically. It's the same issuance and distribution method that we are having from ECCB to financial institutions, credit unions, to holders. What is the potential impact on the financial institution? Is not to disintermediate. They're part of the system. It's to increase innovation in the delivery of financial services and to create new products and services from this innovation. As I close, we just want to make sure that persons understand that KYC, AML, CFT are critical components of the design to ensure confidence in the system. And you're assigned based on a profile to tiers that will therefore determine the volume and value of transactions that can be facilitated. And that comes to the end, as we say, this is the first step for us in moving to mass deployment of our digital EC digital cash currency. We see this as a part of the modernization of the payment system. And at the end of it all, our objective is to ensure that the citizens of the region are positively impacted, both at the household, the business, and the government level. And I will listen to the other, my other presenter, and then be open to any questions. I will now come back to sharing my video.
Thank you so much, Ms. Welsh. A wonderful, concise, and complete presentation. So I think my main takeaways and for the audience is, one, the future is here in the ECCB, and 3 keywords: faster, cheaper, and safer payment transactions in the Caribbean. And I'm really looking forward to discussing further. Following up on my first introduction, Mr. Chen will now present. We will then follow with a discussion with myself and our 2 panelists, and the last 15 minutes will open the floor for questions. All of you connected through Zoom, please raise your hands and we'll attend your questions. Those of you connected through Facebook Lives, please post your questions, and some of our wonderful members of our team will make sure that we receive them and attend to them. And no more delays, Mr. Chen, please go ahead and present. Welcome.
Hello, everyone. First of all, I just want to say a big thank you to Annie, Laura, and the team for adding some excitement to my otherwise monotonous day in quarantine. So thank you. And then second of all, I'm really happy that Sybil went before me because she did a lot of heavy lifting for me. And I will more so focus on maybe perhaps a 10,000 feet overview of the rationale behind creating this project and some of the objectives we're looking to achieve. Speaking on this project is dubbed Project Sand Dollar because obviously sand dollar has a very symbolic meaning to the Caribbean. And the objective of our current Bahamian payment systems is to make the payment system more efficient, to achieve more inclusive, cost affordable, and creating a more even access for financial institutions across the Bahamas, and also further strengthen the national defense against money laundering, as well as other illicit activities currently being perpetrated by cash. We also want to further reduce the reliance on cash usage in the domestic market, because as we all know, the printing, the designing, the handling, and the logistics around handling cash is very expensive, as well as very unsafe and unsecured. So the current state of banking in the Bahamas right now, we are very developed financially, but furthermore, we are also very developed technologically. We did a survey recently, and the result came back to state that we have over 95% of individuals here with access to a mobile device as well as access to internet service. So, however, there are still significant gaps in access to services, as well as the rising cost of producing financial products through traditional means have further reduced the access, particularly those in the family islands. The configuration of Bahamas is very peculiar. We have Nassau being the hub of a lot of the economic activities, and then we have hundreds of other islands and keys that surround the hub, Nassau being the capital. And there is also a sporadic presence of banking in those family islands, particularly after the 2008 financial crisis. So this project was really derived from a place of need, needing to attend to those individuals, because right now the current state of affairs is individuals have to take ferries to arrive at perhaps a main island in order to have access to financial services. And we really think that that is not the way to go, and that is creating a lot of prohibitive cost to extend open and even access to all. Our objectives for adopting a widespread use of electronic payments is to really achieve 100% access to digital financial services, to have measurable cost reduction in transactions, to be able to have fully enabled electronic payments from mom and pop shops to large mega resorts, and eventually to all the financial institutions and government agencies alike. To also reduce the size of unrecorded economic activities, and to finally extend and enable digital business transactions for all to be able to access. And how do we propose to achieve this? We intend to use this four-pronged system, one of which is to establish the proper policy initiatives to improve customer due diligence process. Recently, we had enacted a policy to where financial institutions only require one form of government-issued ID to open a bank account, which certainly increases the level of financial inclusion, and also brings in the previously underbanked or unbanked individuals, introduce them into the formal financial system. Secondly, we intend to develop a shared eKYC platform in conjunction with the government to allow that whole segmented sort of identity amongst various agencies to have cohesive and unified access to a shared platform to where information can be inputted as well as extracted seamlessly and have that interoperability. also to advance the infrastructure and regulatory reform necessary to underpin this whole new digital ecosystem. And then finally, we intend to implement an interoperable digital payments gateway for businesses and consumers alike. Now to dive a bit into the project specific. Back in 2018 of August, we had issued an expression of interest which attracted more than 30 submissions globally. This really underscored the importance of this CBDC initiative around the globe. And we have since selected a preferred technology solutions provider by the name of Enzia. And they are actually a global, a conglomerate of various global powerhouses, which is really supporting our technology side of the project. And furthermore, we have extended policy and legislative reforms with the aims to strengthen exchange control regulation as well as AML CFT safeguards. How do we achieve this? Our ecosystem is pretty much the same as it is the status quo right now. We still are mandated to mint and issue the central bank digital currency, and we intend to distribute them through the commercial banks, through the non-bank financial institutions such as the payment service providers and the money transfer businesses, as well as the credit unions. And they then onboard the clients through a CBDC onboarding module, and the information that they collect flows into this KYC AML check, which is the regulatory compliance process. And that is all within that information resides within the shared eKYC platform, which is underpinned by distributed ledger technology, which then we are issuing individuals with devices that allow them to access the digital platform, namely application on their mobile devices. And secondly, we also have a smart card that uses a one-time pass that generates a one-time passcode to also have that two-factor authentication when presenting access to be more secured and more encrypted. And it is our eventual objective to have the government agencies as well as all of the employers using Sand Dollar as a means to make payroll as well as other government disbursements. Through then they can use for further purchases of goods and services, make P2P transfers, as well as to pay utilities, etc. Obviously, the benefits are very clear, as mentioned by Sybil. It creates real-time settlement of transactions, no T+1, no T+2. It supports universal access to banking and financing, creating a virtually costless medium of exchange, and it increases security as well as accountability of of the flow of money, and it improves the overall level of financial inclusion across the Bahamas, discourages illegal and nefarious activities being perpetrated by cash. It also enhances interoperability between the financial institutions, and it becomes more so financial institution agnostic, meaning that once you have the wallet, you can pretty much interoperate between all of the financial institutions at no cost, at least for the consumers. And lastly, it ensures that we have adequate central bank money for the public to enact some of our monetary policies and fiscal policies. Finally, I want to discuss a little bit about the innovations that can potentially stem from this exercise. It obviously will enhance the level of e-commerce, being able to empower young entrepreneurs to be able to be their own boss and be able to operate online and be able to accept alternative forms of payment. Being able to, and also secondly, for financial institutions being able to be better informed of credit history as well as credit worthiness to enable microcredit, micro lending. And also on a smaller level, more granular level, to enable families to manage their expenditures better and being able to extend this wallet to their kids and being able to monitor what they make purchases on when they go to school. And finally, to create a hassle-free sort of payment and payroll distribution channel to where vendors are not paying an arm and a leg for these types of services. So in conclusion, we feel that this project will certainly promote financial inclusion. It will lead to more inclusive economic growth. And then we think that we anticipate that the benefits eventually will outweigh the costs. So we are excited that in our region, we have two institutions that are actively looking to implement this. And we are optimistic that the future is extremely bright. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chen. Fantastic, concise presentations from both our panelists today. And just a bit of a recap. So Sand Dollar is a very well-known project in the region, in the Caribbean, and beyond as well. There seems to be definitely big perks in terms of lower bureaucracy, more agile transactions, transparency, and accountability. I see there's quite a few questions being posted on the feed, which is very exciting. We'll be addressing possibly some of them in our discussion, and we'll make space to answer some specific questions in about 15-20 minutes time. Thank you everybody for listening in today. Let's move on to the discussion. So the future's here, and blockchain is no longer just a discussion amongst the tech experts and sort of private sector financial services, but central banks are coming on and really heavily so. We've got impressive pilots going on in the Bahamas, in the Eastern Caribbean, Canada, the UK. So it's more and more a reality that we're seeing every day. And given the challenges we have now, it seems like we might even catapult these discussions to a much faster reality of how do we get payments through when there are geographical distances or when people physically just cannot access payments or cannot access the financial system in a traditional sense. The economics team at the IDB, at the Caribbean Department, have been doing a lot of work on financial access and inclusion. We've got several papers published on the IDB publications website, and we have a quarterly bulletin that we published last year with analysis of all our member countries. And we note that there's an increasing research and evidence that there are strong positive linkages between financial sector depth, access, and economic development. And what's more, for example, in the SDGs, 8 out of the 17 SDGs are directly related to financial access and inclusion. So it's more and more a general agreement that these are important issues for growth, for development, and for inclusive growth, which is the word that everybody's been talking about recently. Now, here's my question. With both these projects, which are fantastic examples, what do you think, give us 1 or 2 examples of how the opportunities they bring to foster financial access and inclusion, but also what are some of the limitations that you're finding? So this is not the answer to all our problems. So what are some of the limitations that you're finding and some of the recommendations you would give to users, public, policymakers to focus on?
I'll let Sybil take it first.
Okay, ladies first, men when it's danger. Okay, so basically, we have looked at all of the issues in the ecosystem. If we take an ecosystem approach, as you have said, Laura, in terms of how do we make sure that all of the pillars, the foundation pillars, are supportive of this whole mass usage of a digital sovereign currency. And we recognize across the Caribbean and other parts of the world as well that internet connectivity is critical for this, because we are using an internet-based architecture. We are using that. And so that is important. While you don't have to have internet access to receive the funds, you have to have internet access to send the funds. And so we are working with our service providers for a solution that will not have a cost to the customer. And that is important to really catalyze adoption and mass usage of this. It can't be for the privileged few. It has to be for the masses because this is a sovereign currency in digital form. And that is critical. We've also recognized that education is critical because you are changing the mindsets of persons and how to move from just using your phone to talk and chat and surf the internet and play games. Now you're saying in your hand is a tool that can deliver for you that financial efficiency. It can also deliver for you that budgeting efficiency because you're getting transactional information in your palm of your hand, literally, about where you are spending, how much you are spending. And this can help to buttress as we are still as a central bank developing a credit bureau, at least for micro and small businesses, you can now go to financial institutions who keep having the same statement of, we don't have enough financial information about you to provide you with access to credit. And that is where we're talking about financial inclusion for the underbanked. They must have access not just to get money that they have, but to also to access the full gamut of information, services, advisory services. And so all of these things we recognize that change management from both at the individual and at the enterprise level has to take place. Governments have to look at what is the new business model, because you can't just layer on this onto existing business models. You've got to really consider end-to-end processes and then be able now to reshape that process considering a digital platform. And so it's several of these things: education, cybersecurity. We've got to really be a little more conscientious that while the systems are built to be cyber resilient, at the end of the day, the individual also has a part to play in cybersecurity. So how do you create strong passwords? How do you make sure that you have you use authentication that is robust? And how, you know, sometimes we're very much in this part of the world, somebody will say, lend me your phone so I can make a call. And you just in front of them do, you know, we trust. There's a trust of a sort of communal sort of trust. And you don't want to say, don't trust, but I think it was Ronald Reagan who said trust but verify. And so in these circumstances, you don't even want to give your significant other your phone, knowing that you've told them all of your authentication passwords, and then they move money. While it can be traceable, the money has been moved, and it will create a sort of frictions at home and elsewhere for that to happen. So those are some of the things, of course, the regulatory issues as we talk about data privacy, and also as was discussed this morning in terms of identification, universal IDs. We don't have a single universal ID in the region. You know, different AML rules. Some ask for 2 pieces of ID, some ask for KYC rules, some ask for 2 pieces, some ask for 1. So that whole harmonization of the regulations across is part of the thrust of the central bank as well. And I'll pause here.
Very well said, Sybil. Very well said. We recognize that the Bahamas shares a lot of the same experiences and the same challenges as ECB. So I'm going to focus perhaps a bit more on the solutions that we've sort of implemented to counteract some of those challenges mentioned. As many of you guys know, the Bahamas really got hit with a series of black swan events dating back to late 2019, where we got hit with a very severe storm, Hurricane Dorian. And it pretty much destroyed all of our telecommunication infrastructure. So we had to figure out a way to extend that, the service to our residents in Abaco and Grand Bahama, which intensified our efforts to accelerate the pilot in those affected locales. So we essentially had to build a proprietary network infrastructure from the ground up. And by ground up, we literally mean going to various homeowners and residents to erect some sort of a transmission device on either their rooftops or on the utility poles. And this proprietary network is essentially providing redundancy in the event that telecommunication networks go out or utility companies suddenly go out in an event like the hurricane or an earthquake. So that helps to create an offline capability in our wallets to whereby even if we're not getting any level of services, we can still transact sand dollar to speed up the level of economic recovery in those affected regions. And in regards to education, it is also a challenge in the Bahamas as well, because we've been cash heavy for so long, and it's tough to break old habits, as we all know. So right now, as it stands, I think converting that first batch of paper fiat into sand dollar is a big challenge for us, because of how sparsely populated some of these islands are. It's hard to really set physical infrastructure and physical presence to allow those individuals to access easily. So that is a part of the challenge that we're still looking to address. Obviously, we've also extended the cardless onboarding as well, which allows individuals to onboard directly on the app, very similarly to the ECB. And yeah, I would just say education is certainly important, and we are looking to counteract that through hosting town halls and being there on the ground. Obviously, it's halted right now by COVID-19, but we intend, once the curfew is lifted, we're going to go back on these piloted islands, Abaco and Exuma, which are the two piloted grounds that we currently have, and just going there, doing town hall meetings, doing seminars, doing education sessions, and having fairs to help individuals onboard and acclimate and educate on the importance of using digital payments infrastructures.
Great, thank you both. Developing this last idea, for example, when you were talking about Dorian and Abaco, and I know one of the main discussions in the Bahamas was how do we get money there quickly to people who need it, right? And one of the first places where heads moved were you guys, sand dollar. Oh, so you're on. Maybe we can get money through that. I personally worked in Kenya, and they use M-Pesa there to get money to very remote tribes out in the north of the country, for example. And actually, COVID-19 gives us a very interesting opportunity here, right? And I was wondering, similar to what some of these requests you've had with getting money to people who normally wouldn't be banked or normally wouldn't have access to money and desperately need it in times of crisis, as we're finding right now, in times when cash is king. Maybe now the digital cash will be king. What solutions are you finding, or have you had any discussions internally of how you can use some of the lessons learned from your pilot, or even some of your platforms, to be able to get cash and get currency to those who are most in need, or maybe in more remote areas?
Well, this has really been one of the thinking behind why we are doing this. And COVID-19 has brought it even more to the fore. For example, currently the country's on shutdown, and governments have to leverage safety nets for the disadvantaged population, particularly those in micro and small businesses who, unlike persons who are in the employment of someone, they can then draw down on certain benefits that business may afford, like continuing to pay salaries. For those who are self-employed, then once you have to shut your doors, then your income stream is basically closed. Governments have offered to provide some sort of financial relief. In the era of social distancing, how do you provide that relief? Banks are only open maybe 1 or 2 days a week in some countries. and they are only letting in 4 persons per day into the bank, the physical bank, and they're trying to advise most persons to use online banking. But that does not consider that there are a lot of persons who still don't have online mobile banking. And so what we are hoping is that post-pilot, once we begin to deploy, our post-pilot is set for the second half of this year. We're currently been developing and prototype testing, and we're supposed to go into workshops. That has been a little challenging since we can't physically train. So we are seeing how we can do some level of remote, but there's a need for some level of face-to-face to finalize all the training before we go live. And so the whole idea for us is that when we deploy this in terms of post-pilot, governments can easily have a channel by which they can pay funds to a particular group or sector or individuals without having to interface directly. And so this is part of the whole transformation of the economy to address our ability to be agile, because we are accustomed to so many different issues. We are open economists, and so whatever happens outside happens inside. And so even beyond just us having 8 countries that are divided by water, the whole issue of when something happens outside, we have to be able to be nimble, and this provides that agility for us. So that's part of the contemplation of why we are doing this. It could be hurricanes, it could be some sort of health issue, and all sorts of other things that can create the need for us to shift. We are hoping the digital transformation will help that resilience and agility.
And in addition to Sybil's point of priming the pump, so to speak, through payroll and government disbursements, we as central bank also need to create a meaningfully engaged ecosystem to where consumers can spend that money, so as to avert any short circuitry or the need to have to cash out. So that has been a challenge with COVID-19, because we haven't been on the ground as much to be able to equip the vendors to reasonably accept sand dollar or any form of digital payments as a means of payment. So that's something that we would have to immediately address in order to prevent any form of short circuitry to where people need to still cash out in order to reasonably spend the money that they were given, either through social services or through payroll. So that's something that we're actively working on, and I think that that's an important issue that that eventually any entity that's looking to disseminate digital payments will need to address as well at some point.
Thank you both. And to the rest of the audience, I'm sure there are many people out there who have wonderful possible solutions to some of these challenges. Please reach out if you do. Compete Caribbean, ourselves, Mr. Bobby Chen or Sybil. Now we're gonna move on to open the floor to Q&A. We've had a fantastic amount of questions coming up on the chat as we've been going along, and I'm gonna pick a few. And I will then have some of the team members who are letting me know some of the Facebook Live questions. So let's have a look. What do we have here? Somebody on Facebook Live has asked, how will the digital dollar integrate into e-commerce and other web and mobile development frameworks? Let me know if you want me to ask the question again.
No, I think we got it. Yes, for our pilot, we are not integrating with the internet in terms of doing online payments at the first phase of our test. I think it's important when we're testing to have a test that is manageable. Particularly, we're testing in 4 different countries. So while the solution in terms of our requirements, we are looking at that being a second tier of our testing. But what we are looking at first is to make sure we have a robust solution that works, that facilitates persons' ability to make payments move transactions, integrate it into their back office accounting, tax reporting, has the relevant test for persons to onboard remotely. So those are the things we are testing in terms of it being interoperable and all of those requirement issues. We, however, note that while it might not at this stage facilitate online payments integration, because it facilitates transfers, one can then move money easily within seconds from St. Kitts to Dominica, or St. Kitts to Grenada, or Antigua to Montserrat. And so those are the things that would be sort of a first step to move to online. But it will facilitate persons being able to have engagements with businesses across the waters and be able to do those transfers that way.
And similarly, in the Bahamas, our intention is not to overreach our capacity as central bank. So our intention is truly to mint a digital version of the currency and then allowing the various financial institutions as well as the fintech providers to innovate and create further solutions to be able to transmit these digital payments. But right now, a component that we've built into our wallet-to-wallet solution is the use of QR codes, similarly to in the ECB case. But that QR code can be embedded in your online website, in your online platforms, and it can be transmitted digitally through WhatsApp. So there are a lot of ways you can actually, I guess, create a platform to where you can accept payments as either the employer or as the business owner. So these are the things that we've made things more simple for individuals to use.
Great. Next question from Suresh. He says, great initiative. How's liquidity created through network distributions or financial institutions?
Yes, part of what we want to make sure, and I think Bobby alluded to this, is to have the digital currency continuously circulated within the ecosystem. And so part of that whole ecosystem build is to allow beyond the financial institutions, the commercial banks, the credit unions, to be able to facilitate cash in and cash out services. For us, we see this as being very well embedded in the merchants because they are receiving both forms of currency. They're receiving the physical, they're receiving the digital. And so what we have made sure is on the regulatory side, there is no objections to that. And then there has been no objections on that from the various regulators, national regulators. And because it is not it's not a money income making. There is no fee assigned to converting one form of EC to another. So that is where we are looking at that to be able to enhance the distribution. Now, the more merchants that you bring into the system, that is a plus for ensuring the circulation of this digital currency. And the more individuals who download and access the wallet and then convert from their customary way of spending to digital currency, that helps to expand. So it's all the issue. Markets are made up of both sides of the equation. You have to have sellers and you have to have buyers. The more that we can develop the market, that will help in terms of the distribution of the digital currency.
Yes, in addition to the financial institutions, we've also extended access to non-bank financial institutions like payment service providers, facilitators, and money transfer businesses alike. And they're also allowed to maintain accounts at the central bank to be able to facilitate that initial fiat to sand dollar to digital currency conversion to prime the pump, so to speak. So yes, very similar to ECB experience, I must say.
Thank you both. The next question is from Sylvia. How does the ECCB project that Sybil explained tie into the use case proposed by the Dominica Cooperative Societies League that will receive pitches in the next session today?
when we're as the central bank, when we speak about transformation, we see it as I said, an ecosystem approach of various stakeholders. And so we are not seeing this as the only innovation on the block in terms of digital payments. In fact, this is supposed to catalyze. And so we embrace the solution from the credit union who are looking at building their own wallets. As we said, we're building a platform. We expect persons, whether you're in the fintech community, the financial community, to develop your own particular wallets that can layer on services. And Bobby spoke to that as well. As a central bank, we're giving the basic services. We want to make sure we have a strong, stable currency and the security behind that, whether it's in digital or physical or balances. Now, other businesses can then use that to develop a broader ecosystem of services and get those to persons. So whatever that is, be it a credit union, be it a fintech company, or some new micro business that has an idea and leverages the power of technology to level the playing field on which they can provide services that add value. And so that's really what we're about, is to provide a platform on which other services and other persons can build their own wallets. And once it goes through the issue of making sure it fits all, it has a checklist for all of the things that should be at a baseline for stability and security. And then that's what we're striving to facilitate.
Mm-hmm. Great. So we have 5 minutes left. Does anybody from the Zoom chat room want to raise a hand and ask a question? Otherwise, I'll read a couple more from the feed. I don't see any raised hands. Okay, well, I'll have 2 more questions then from the chat. Again, if anybody from the Zoom room wants to raise a hand and ask, please feel free to do so. This is a question from Andre. He says, thanks very much, Sybil. What are the regulatory and/or technical considerations that need to be addressed to make the digital currency compatible with the global financial system? For example, conversions to other digital currencies or fiat currencies or open digital payment networks.
I think we had a slight discussion yesterday on this, Bobby and I and yourself, Laura, in terms that when you're talking about interoperability, you have to ensure that while you have standards that allow for various blockchains to talk to each other, the other must have a digital currency, because you're really interoperating sovereign with sovereign. And that's part of what a central bank does. Now, there are other service providers who may want to innovate and interoperate sovereign with private, but that's not the role of the central bank. We provide a platform where other businesses can do. And so the issue is, when as a central bank, central banks usually have in the financial sector certain currencies that the financial system are allowed to convert and exchange, and they post those rates, the exchange rates, on their boards, whether it's digital or physical, in the banking system, the commercial credit union system. For those currencies that are not, that might be floating, that have floating exchange regimes, then there may be some innovator who wants to take on that exchange rate risk and be innovative in that. But as a central bank, we are focused on sovereign to sovereign, and wherever, this is part of a wider CARICOM project, wherever there are financial, there are countries that plan to or in the process of digitizing their sovereign currency, and that is compatible with the approved currencies for exchange, then that will be something that is going to be facilitated and pursued. Of course, as we said, there needs to be some person who is willing to get into the middle and convert with those currencies that may not be part of the regime for currently existing, because of the exchange rate fluctuations and the risk that are associated with that. But of course, there's always a solution to these things. We have a wealth of economists and financial and techie persons that what did not seem possible yesterday is possible today. So the only thing we need is a start. And so these sort of conversations help to show us a more clearer path to the whole issue of regional integration, a single economic and financial space, which bodes well for everyone when that is achieved.
And just to add on to that, I do think that as more countries develop their own CBDC, eventually we're going to see some uniform global payments rail to which all the CBDCs will be underpinned. And that will create that interoperability to where perhaps international FX can be created instantaneously, real time. And obviously there needs to be certain level of regulatory control that needs to be still implemented by each sovereign entity. But I would imagine that eventually there will be some sort of a unified rail to create that interoperability amongst all of the CBDCs around the world.
Fantastic. Thank you both. So 1 minute each to wrap up. Just for all those developers out there that are listening to us, people looking for opportunities, what timeline and where should they go to check opportunities coming up in both your projects? Sybil, do you want to start? Okay,
well, our central bank website, ECCB-centralbank.org, is where persons will go to find information about our digital currency, our EC Digital Cash pilot project. But I want persons to think about, imagine that everything is possible. Because not only will the central bank lead, but we also want other persons to lead as well. So it's a co-leadership that we see. We have started the conversation. We have invested significantly into driving the way forward. We want persons, it's like in a relay race. I hand over the stick to you and you run with it. So by this conversation, we're handing over the stick. And now the baton. Now you run with it and take it in multiple directions, because we don't want this just to be some narrow focused view of transformation. Transformation is dynamic. And so it's that catalytic issue that we as a central bank want to spur. And then I would say beyond the sky is our limit.
Thank you, Sybil.
Awesome. Yeah, so I'd like to preface my closing by saying that we've already piloted in 2 family islands to much success. We've had over 1,300 active users, and we have about 2,000 pending users with over 30 to 40 businesses with point of sales, digital point of sales being set up to accept sand dollars. Our pilot is expected to run for about 6 months. So right now we are still taking some of the heuristic learnings from the pilot to craft and finalize our final deliverable. Where you can find some of our information, you can go on our centralbankbahamas.com websites, www.centralbankbahamas, or you can go on our Sand Dollar website, which is www.sanddollar.bs. And we are all very excited because our success will also mean that the region is thriving, and we are creating a sort of upgraded, a modernized level of payment acceptability within our ecosystem. So we're very excited and optimistic to what's to come.
Thank you both. And just to wrap up and add, please remember everybody, IDB also has quite interesting resources and amazing projects exactly on these topics. You can check out Lunchtime by IDB Invest, and also the fantastic work that Compete Caribbean and our department in competitiveness, technology and innovation are carrying out in the area of blockchain. Also, please check out the research work that the economics team at the Caribbean department have done in terms of financial access and inclusion. More briefs will be coming out, specifically one on Guyana, and we'll, as soon as COVID is over and timing permits, once this major crisis is over, we'll be probably publishing a brief on a Caribbean settlement network for the Caribbean and the potential benefits on trade this can have on the region. So just to wrap up, 3 words: safer, cheaper, faster payment processes. The future is now. Thank you very much, everybody, for joining.